Hello and welcome to Staying in My Lane podcast. I know it's been a minute. I think it's been like almost 2 weeks since I've released anything. I have been busy and honestly just hasn't worked out to record anything with guests or by myself. But today I decided to do a solo episode of listener questions that I have received since the day I started my podcast. And actually, even since I was a guest on a podcast before I started this one. So today, you get me and a ton of questions that I have been holding on to with not knowing really what to do with them, but today, this is what you get. So we're going to jump right into it, and you can listen and hear what I have to say. So let's jump right into it. The first question: how did the termination of your ex-husband's parental rights impact your sense of safety or peace as a mother? That is a deep question to start off with, you guys. It's made me more self-aware. I don't post my kids on social media. I don't like to say their names to anyone. I don't like to showcase my children. I'm very protective of who I allow access to my children because the one person that was supposed to keep them safe did not. They failed that. So for me, my hypervigilance and my sense of safety is so heightened, and I'm constantly aware of my surroundings. I'm constantly kind of, second guessing or really determining if this is okay to share or who has access to my kids, because it's not something that you ever really get over. And as far as peace as a mother, I've had to really work on healing, forgiving, meditating, and coming to terms that this is our reality. It's a new reality. It's an uncharted territory, but this is where we are, and this is how we have to make do of it. The next question that follows is, what was the moment you knew that your ex-husband's rights needed to be terminated, and how did you emotionally prepare for that process? So I just want to preface this with saying, if you know me, you know that that's not my place to, and it's never been my place to have an opinion on if he should be terminated or not. I think the time that it really hit me was when I realized the severity and the darkness of what actually was going on behind closed doors. I think that the court and DHS, now HHS, they did a really good job of detailing and really digging into what was happening and the consistency of that, which it wasn't hard to prove because it was so graphic and it was so consistent that the kids were able to recount things that happened and detail it to where there's no way that they could have been coached. There's no way that they could have made this up because they were 5 and 8 at the time. And emotionally preparing for something like that, I just don't think you can. I think I really went numb for a little bit, and I just decided that I either have to face this head on, feel it, go through it, not around it, like I always say, and really dive deep into accepting that the person that was entrusted to be their father did something really horrific, and moving through that with grace, forgiveness, and understanding, which again, I don't think you can understand something like that or what's behind a thought process of doing something like that, but trying to understand that this is where we are, this is what we have to do to get through it, and being able to put that behind us, having dealt with it, and knowing that it's always going to be part of our lives. Okay, so my next question is, how did you cope with being disbelieved, dismissed during times that you were asking for help or protection? So I kind of think about this with having been in the relationship that I was in prior to my current marriage. He was a good manipulator. He was a good chameleon. I always say that narcissists, abusers are like chameleons. They blend into their surroundings. They're very smart. They're very high IQ. They know how to trick people. They know what to do to pull vulnerable people in. So I feel like when I was in a vulnerable space, having been married to this person, having been divorced, having been a single mom, and then now meeting my husband that I'm with now, when you try to tell the truth, people don't want to hear the truth. And that's something I've really learned, is that people want what feels comfortable and familiar. They don't like it when the truth comes out or when there's uncomfortable conversations or uncomfortable truths to be confronted with. So sometimes I feel like people who've disbelieved me or dismissed my feelings maybe just don't want to confront it or talk about it because maybe they haven't hit that emotional maturity or they haven't healed themselves to be able to do that. So I don't take it personally, but when I was going through my things, I tried to do a lot of it on my own. Even when I was going through the dark time when my ex-husband was terminated and that whole process, I tried to take care of a lot of my emotion on my own because I'm so independent that it's almost uncomfortable for me to be emotional and force that onto somebody else. So I just dealt with it myself. And if people don't believe me, if people don't want to hear about it, they don't want to talk about it, or they dismiss my feelings, then that's on them. And they don't need to be a part of that process. And they don't need to be a part of my life moving forward if they can't believe what actually has been an experience for me or my children. The next question: what was the turning point when you realized you had more power than you thought? Ooh, that's a good one. So, by the way, I did not read through a lot of these before I started this recording. So, I am reading these, a lot of them, for the first time in a long time. And so it's kind of like starting all over. The turning point when I realized I had more power than I thought. Okay, well, I don't like to think about having power per se, but I think the point that I realized that things were going to go in a good direction for me is when I really grounded myself, made my circle smaller, turned toward faith and God, meditated, healing holistically, doing all the things to take care of my mental and physical health and being a better mom, a better wife, a better person. That's when I realized that things were going to get better for me. I don't really look at it as having more power than I thought I did, but I think it's having the right things on your side. Having God, trusting God. I mean, anytime I go through something, I just ask Him to show me the way, and I trust in Him, because I think so often we want to believe that things are going to happen in the way that we want them to happen. We want to have that power and control because it feels safe. And so I think that one of my biggest strengths that I've developed over the past couple years is being able to let God lead me in a direction where I may not know where it's going, but trusting Him enough to know that He's going to protect me and take care of me. So just being able to do that, I think, has helped me get to where I'm at now. It's helped me heal. It's helped me feel stronger. And so I think that's just the best answer I can give to that question. Next question. I know you were working in the schools during the time that you were going through the termination of your ex-husband's parental rights. What was the hardest part about advocating for your child, your own child, while being emotionally drained yourself and potentially being drained by working around other kids? That's a good question. So I'm really good at separating work and home. And I try to keep my professional and my personal lives, completely separate. So when I think about the advocating that I did for my children and the things that I've had to do, it actually brings me so much joy to be that voice for them. It brings me a lot of happiness to know that I can speak on their behalf for what I know is best and what I'm trusting in my intuition and my gut. Because, side note, I have a very strong intuition. I can read the room, I can read the vibe, I can read energy really, really well, and I've never been wrong on that. So for me, I trust that, and I try to really dig deep into what I'm feeling in my body, what I'm feeling in my mind, and kind of feel what's best in that moment and what I can do to make sure that my kids get the best experience possible and are also protected at the same time. And I think a lot of my knowledge and experience, my expertise also come into play. Is I know what is right and what is wrong, what's legal, what's not. So having that knowledge and expertise really comes into play when I am fighting for my children and what is best for them. Ooh, the next question kind of goes into this. How do you stay grounded as a mom, even when life is overwhelming, and even as a law enforcement wife? So I just kind of talked about being grounded. I'm very grounded as a person. I've done a lot of work to heal my chakras, keep them in line. I know that sounds ridiculous to a lot of people. If you've listened to the previous episodes when Andrew and I talked, I actually got him into some chakra healing and alignment videos on YouTube and doing those as a meditation, finding my grounding by, doing healing exercises, releasing the tension in my body. All of those things are really healthy, as well as obviously eating healthy, drinking healthy. I've tried really hard to be sober, and that's something I'm working really hard on after the babies are born, and kind of all of that. And we've switched to functional medicine with our family, holistic medicine. That is something that I feel has really been able to help heal the kids. I've detoxed them. Things are such things as parasites and toxins releasing out of our bodies, and being mindful of what we allow ourselves to be exposed to as far as TV, phones, social media, all of that. For me, I try really hard to be cognizant of what I allow in my mind, because I think all of that's really important. What you allow in your space, what kind of energy you allow in your heart, in your mind, in your body, that's all going to play a part in how you feel and how you also reciprocate that energy. So I'm really mindful of what energy and what vibrations I allow in my space. And I know that sounds really hippie-ish, but it's not. It's literally being able to protect my peace and my energy. Okay, so I skipped over this question. Do you ever feel like you're still waiting for justice even after the court decisions with your ex-husband? Woo, that's a heavy one too. Well, yes and no. I can't really answer that concretely, but yes, because I wish that there would have been more justice as far as like legally. It would have been great if he would have went to, prison for this, because it's any crimes against children, I feel, should be an automatic goodbye. But then also on the flip side, the kids get to be protected because they don't ever have to see him again. And I know that there's going to be justice when he passes into another world. So I don't really feel like it's my place to say he should go to heaven or hell. And that's up to God. That's not on me. And I don't really feel like it's my place to judge. I think that we've gotten so used to judging. And although, yes, I will say anybody who has crimes against children should automatically go. But it's not my place. And I have to be very mindful of that, because that also can affect my peace and my energy. And again, I'm trying to protect that as much as I can. So I just don't think about it. Okay, on to the next question. What was the moment that you realized your family wasn't going to show up for you in the way that you needed? Ooh, okay, that's good. Well, I think I've known for a really long time that they aren't going to show up for the way that I need them to. And it's not really the way I need them to, it's the way that should be normalized and healthy. People who post a lot of be a decent human, be kind, and love each other, and all this kind of stuff. I feel like those are the people who feel like they have to put on a front more than any other people. I mean, I'll occasionally post things, but I don't feel the need to prove myself or my kindness or my worth to other people. But I think it's really easy to, when you're someone who is a certain way behind closed doors, you feel like you have to present yourself in a certain way to the public. And I think the time that I noticed more than anything is when I was going through a hard time and I was the one reaching out to them and they were not reaching out to me. Nobody asked how I was doing. I had to text them. Nobody said anything that was remotely comforting to me. And I took that really personal, because they are the first ones to post that they're donating to the homeless shelter, or they're the first ones to post prayers for somebody. But when it comes to me specifically, they don't want to support me or be there. And that's been a constant since I was a little kid. And I think it goes back to the fact that I was the chosen scapegoat in my family. That's how it is. And it's easy because I didn't have any siblings. I was the youngest. There was a huge age gap as far as the older cousins and me. And, people often accommodate the most dysfunctional person in the family. And sometimes that's how it is. And I am not the most dysfunctional person in the family because they don't accommodate me. So I've just kind of left it at that and just realized that they don't deserve a place in my life. And if they can't be good to their own family member, but they want to be good out in the public eye, they're just fake. It's not even worth it. It's honestly sad that they feel the need to keep up this impression and this image, but they can't truly reflect on the fact that they may have accidentally, unintentionally, or intentionally hurt my feelings at some point. And you know what? If we can't acknowledge that and talk through it or work through it, then you don't deserve a place in my life, and I don't want you in my life. The next question: how did you begin to untangle the emotional abuse that you experienced in your family growing up? Well, I think I started by acknowledging it, and I fought for being able to talk about it. You know, that's something that was so silenced in my family and so dismissed as, you know, Lindsay's just the young, dumb one, or Lindsay's the party girl, or she's the emotionally immature one. Or, for example, when I released some podcast episodes, I was told that I was lying, and that's just not true. And I think that they want to protect that image, they want to protect that facade, and I'm just done staying silent about it. It's it's a whole thing where they're really, really nice to my mom and dad, but then they're really dismissive and emotionally neglectful and mean to me. And I'm just done with it. I've been talking about this for years, and I've been called crazy and a liar and all these things that are not true, because I think I'm the most emotionally mature and emotionally in tune person in my family, because I've done the work. I've went through the hard, dark trenches of healing and, you know, taking accountability and reflecting on the way I've been and saying, okay, you know what? I can see why that could be a problem, or I know that I was this way. I've done all that work, and I've worked really hard to say I'm sorry. I've worked really hard to change, and they still don't care. And so I think it's mostly the fact that they just don't like me. They don't care. I've never been part of that family. So I've removed myself completely from that family. And the most important thing I think I've learned is God will put you in situations that will break you, but it's to teach you a lesson, and it's to help you heal and help others heal. So I took my experience that I went through and I stayed silent about for so long, and I turned it into something positive by being able to be relatable and talk about it and break the stigma around family and brokenness and all of these things that we don't talk about. How have you learned to live with the grief of being emotionally and sometimes physically abandoned by people who were supposed to love you unconditionally? Well, you know, I think I've had to do a lot of healing. I've had to do a lot of self reflection. I've had to work on, let's see how I can say this. I've had to do a lot of work to forgive people who are never going to apologize. And one thing I think is important to say is that says more about them and their character or lack of than it does you. So if you can forgive somebody who hasn't hurt you, or sorry, if you can forgive somebody that has hurt you but hasn't apologized for that, then that says more about your strength and your forgiveness and you as a person than it does them, because there are going to be people who just don't think they're wrong because they don't want to acknowledge that guilt and that shame and that pain that comes along with healing through that. So they just won't acknowledge it at all. And if that's the case, then it's time to just let them go and remove them from your life and move on so that you can be happy and heal. What was the most painful betrayal from your family, and how did you begin to heal from it? I think this goes back to the fact that they've never acknowledged the fact that they've made me feel so insignificant and so unimportant. And they've just constantly taken what they have done and how they have acted towards me and twisted it to make me look like I'm crazy. And I think that for years I've tried to be part of a situation, kind of like be part of the group or be part of the family. And I haven't had an easy 10 years. I mean, I went through a divorce, went through an abusive marriage. I went through the termination of my ex-husband and all the stuff that came with that. And we've lost a couple babies with my current husband. And now we're having twins and we're expanding our family, and it's going to be fantastic. And I'm happy. And as much as I want to share that with them, part of the healing process for me requires me to understand and acknowledge that this is my reality. They don't want to be part of my life. They don't want to support me. They just want to be nosy. They just want to know what's going on so that they can talk about it or they can judge me or whatever. Because, like I've said, I've been told in my family from family members that I've been judged unfairly, that there's been unfair assumptions and opinions about me. And I don't know why that's so hard to acknowledge, because part of being a family is admitting when we're wrong. And so for me, understanding and acknowledging that they're not going to do that means that I have to ultimately put up that boundary and not allow them in my life or any access to my life, to protect my peace, but also to protect my children, because I don't want them to think that this dysfunction is normal. I don't want them to grow up thinking that people who hurt you or family who hurts you or whoever hurts you should just be allowed back into your life because they're related to you. So ultimately, that's part of my healing process. This kind of goes along into the next question. Do you still wrestle with the hope that your family will come back into your life, or have you fully accepted that loss? Well, as much as I would like them to come back into my life, I don't think I would ever allow them back into my life, because if they would apologize and truly, truly change, yes, but the chances of that are slim and low. So I'm a very realistic person. So the world feels very black and white for me. And I know there's a lot of gray areas for a lot of things. And I try really hard to understand those things. But when it comes to something like this, you either have to forgive and move on, or you can perseverate and hold on to it. And I'm choosing to forgive and move forward. I was once in a certain situation like you. How do you cope with people saying, but they're your family, when they don't know your story or when they judge you? Okay, that's a good question. So I feel like a lot of people can relate to this. The saying when people say, but they're your family, that's almost like making it an excuse for a toxic person or a toxic relationship to continue. And I think that's very damaging, because, it doesn't matter who it is. If you're in a toxic relationship, or if you feel like someone's toxic, let them go. Just because they're related to you by blood, biologically, that doesn't make it okay. That's not an excuse for them to hurt you or gaslight you or manipulate you or damage you emotionally, physically, mentally. That's not okay. So I think it's really important to just acknowledge the fact that, yes, this person hurt me. Yes, they're related to me, but maybe switch the thinking to, how can I make this situation a learning experience and move forward and heal, rather than I need to just keep forgiving them and forgiving them and forgiving them, or I just need to keep trying and putting in all this effort to someone who doesn't want to be part of my life or doesn't want to see me reach my full potential. And I said earlier, I think that so many family members cater to the most dysfunctional person in the family. For me, it's an extended relative who people cater to her. They think she's great. And I can see right through it, because she's really mean to me, and she's been really mean to me. And she's made comments about my kids that are very hurtful and damaging. So for me, when people say, but they're your family, okay, but that doesn't seem to matter to them. That's my response. Because if they were really that concerned and they loved me because they're my family, then they wouldn't want to hurt me. And if they were your family, I'm talking to the person who asked this question, if they truly loved you and they were your family, they wouldn't want to see you hurt. What boundaries did you have to put in place with your family to protect your peace and healing? So for me, I didn't really have to put in a ton of boundaries, because they kind of just stopped talking to me once I started speaking the truth, which told me all I need to know, because people don't like it when you speak the truth, right? And the truth makes people uncomfortable. So I really didn't have to put a lot of boundaries into place. Like, it wasn't like they were trying to contact me and they wouldn't leave me alone. It's kind of the opposite. And it's kind of always been the opposite. I've been this invisible little insignificant parasite that's attached to the family tree or something. And that's okay. I'm fine with that. But the boundaries I did put up was that I told one of my relatives to not contact me. Don't ask about my children. She's already broken that rule by asking about my children and about my pregnancy, which none of your damn business is my answer. But making sure that they're not going to have access to my family, making sure that they're not going to have access to anything that my life is what's happening in my life or my children's lives. Because if you can't respect me or treat me with decency, then you don't deserve access to my children. And that's a rule for me with anybody in my life. So I hope everybody can also have that rule, because it's a self-respect thing too. Know your worth. How do you rebuild a sense of identity after feeling discarded or erased by your own blood? Okay, that's good. That's healing. Accepting the truth, accepting what is, accepting reality, and working on yourself. What qualities do you want in your life? Where do you see yourself? And kind of removing that family identity from your identity and realizing that you're your own individual person with your own personality. You are on your own, a separate entity, and really diving into who you are, whether that's picking up a new hobby or finding music that makes you happy, doing something that makes you feel important, that makes you happy, that brings you that joy and peace, I think is important. Rebuilding the fact that in my mind, I am not part of that family. And my family consists of my husband and my children, and that's what's priority. And, feeling discarded and erased, I've felt that way for so long. So I think accepting the truth and accepting that feeling and sitting in that uncomfortable truth, I think has brought me a lot of peace, because it's been uncomfortable. It's been hard. So sitting in that discomfort and really reflecting on what's happened and accepting what I can't change has helped me to find my new identity. Okay, so moving on. What does true friendship mean to you? That's a good one. I think it means being genuine and authentic in the relationship. There's no forcing or trying to change the other person. It's simply enjoying each other's company, bonding over your, similarities and differences, and being able to embrace that. Having that honesty, having that loyalty. So for me, one of the most important things, and I think Emily and I talked about this on one of the Q&As that we did, or the only Q&A that we've done. We were going to do another one, but being able to be confident that your friend, when you leave a room, if your name comes up, your friend is going to protect you and defend you. I think that's the biggest sign of a true friendship, and being able to embrace each other for who you are. Is ghosting a form of betrayal? Okay, that's a really good question. So I haven't looked through all of these. I think I said that earlier. Is ghosting a form of betrayal? Yeah, I think so, because I think it just shows weakness. I think if you can't speak to the other person and talk to them, then I think that that's a weakness. I think that that's something that needs improvement. It just shows the insecurities on the person that's ghosting, and the fact that they don't feel comfortable enough to have a conversation. So yeah, I do think that can be a form of betrayal. I think that it's really taking the easy way out instead of confronting the problem or trying to work it out. So yeah, that's my opinion on that. Is forgiveness always necessary, or is it just closure? Yeah, no, forgiveness is for you. It's not for the other person. So I don't think it's always necessary, but I think it's closure for you. You don't forgive to make the other person feel better. They're still going to go on with their lives regardless of if you forgive them or not. Forgiveness is for you. So it's that closure for your own peace of mind. Are some betrayals actually blessings in disguise? Absolutely. Yeah, I think that it really shows people's true colors when, something goes sideways, or when something happens in a friendship or a relationship where it's a betrayal. Yeah, I think that that can definitely be a blessing in disguise, because it brings that truth out probably sooner than what it would have. So yeah, I think that it speaks for itself. Do you believe in second chances? Oh, like in friendships or relationships? Um, ugh, that's a hard one, because I'm the type of person that if you do me wrong, you're done. You're out of my life. Um, Ironically, there's been a situation recently where I found out that somebody was lying and kind of like living this like double life type of thing. And for me, that's the biggest betrayal. If you can live a lie so publicly, or if you can live a lie so outwardly to where nobody has really been able to pick up on it around you in your circle, then you have no integrity, you have no accountability, there's just nothing there. So, I mean, I don't really believe in second chances, no, because I think that if you get a chance and you screw it up and you can so outwardly lie, then no, it's not worth it. And there's no way I would ever trust somebody like that. However, I will caveat that with if the person can take accountability and change, and if it's a small thing, if it's a big thing, probably not. If it's a small thing, there may be room to grow and forgive, but only if both people are willing to do that. How do we hold ourselves accountable as friends? Call each other out. I mean, if you are truly friends, you should be able to talk to each other in a way that's respectful and has open dialogue without being disrespectful, but call each other out for when you see something. Hey, I saw that you were doing this, blah blah blah, XYZ, whatever. Being able to have that honesty and transparency in a relationship, and any relationship, is super important. Is loyalty more important than honesty and integrity, or vice versa? Okay, this is a really complex question. This is interesting. I think in order to have honesty, you have to have loyalty. And in order to have loyalty, you have to have honesty. I don't really feel like there's any in between with that. Those kind of go hand in hand. And if you're lacking integrity, then both of those things are going to be non existent, anyways. So I think you have to have all three. But I think that integrity is the most important thing, because that's how you act. That's how you are. That's who you are when no one is watching. So if you have to lie, even in that instance, or if you are doing something morally or ethically or criminally wrong, and you still go forward doing that, then that you have none of that. You don't have honesty, you don't have loyalty, you don't have respect or integrity, nothing. So all of that kind of is encompassed together. But if you have no integrity, then you won't have any of those. And if you have integrity, then you should be able to have all of those qualities. And I'm talking true integrity. I'm not talking, I'm going to do this thing one time and I'm going to tell the truth this time and be loyal this time. No, integrity has to be consistent. It has to be a constant. So, in order to have those things, I think you have to have integrity first and foremost, but it has to be a genuine integrity, not just when it's good for show or not just when it's convenient. Okay, so we're moving on to the next set of questions. What are some of the biggest emotional challenges you face as a spouse of a law enforcement officer? So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot. It's emotionally draining to constantly worry about your husband when he's at work. But I think just being able to be there to support him through anything that he needs, being able to be understanding and kind of picking up on when he needs the time for himself, when he needs to, go on a drive or whatever, and being able to be there emotionally for him can be challenging, especially while being a mom and having my own life and my own job. All of that kind of can be draining. And, social media is not very kind to law enforcement. So having to filter that out and not read the negative, but acknowledging that there is negative in the world that we live in, and there is negative law enforcement, there is those people in law enforcement who maybe give them a bad rep, and acknowledging that it does not define who anybody is as a whole. That doesn't define my husband, but trying really hard to not see him get sucked into that. That's been difficult for me. And sometimes I just worry about him. I worry because he is such a good person and I want people to know that he's a good person. And as much as I want to defend him, I know I don't. Well, number one, I don't. I can, but I don't. Just because it's not, I don't like getting into social media wars. I don't like getting into conversations about this kind of stuff. But, just emotionally being there for my husband and being able to be a support and be a good wife, and also be able to have a boundary of what the world says and who the world says he is versus how I really do know him as a person, is kind of emotionally taxing. In what ways has being a law enforcement wife affected your family routines, life, social circle? Well, I think I've talked on 2 episodes now with another friend, Emily. If you guys go and listen to part 1 and 2, we've talked about the social circle part. I don't make being a law enforcement spouse my identity. I don't like that kind of stuff. I don't think that men or women who make their careers their identity is healthy. I think that's very unhealthy. I mean, I'm a social worker, but I don't go around wearing a social worker tattoo on my arm. Um, that's just not something I would ever do. So for me, I mean, I associate with a couple people who are married to law enforcement, but other than that, like that's not something I crave. That's not something I want. I'll post things on TikTok here and there, but I mean, I don't define my life as being a law enforcement wife or being a law enforcement family. And I don't really want to be part of that because if you go back and listen to the episodes, you'll know why. It's very petty and it's very just drama. And I just don't want that in my life. So, other than that, with it affecting our family life and our schedules and our routines, I mean, we just kind of have to make it work. I'm flexible. I understand what my husband has to do. I understand when he has to go places and when he has to go do things for his career. And I fully support that. I will be completely transparent in the fact when he was on nights and we were first together, I would constantly get pissed when he would sleep too long because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm carrying this load by myself. But the more and more that I've matured in my life and in my marriage and my relationships, the more I see that in order for him to be safe and effective at his job, he has to have the rest. He has to have the breaks. He has to take the mental load off. And I'm someone that I can run on 2 hours of sleep. I'm someone that can manage and balance all the things. Just my personality. That's who I am. So for me, that doesn't exhaust me. It just means that I have to get used to the holidays by myself sometimes with the kids or, the missed birthday parties or him coming home late and dinner being in the microwave. That's just life. And I'm completely happy with supporting him and being his number one supporter because that is my role as a wife, regardless of his employment and his career status. So, yeah, you just make it work and you kind of learn to be flexible. How do you support his mental health while also protecting your own? Well, I mean, like we have our own boundaries with each other. We have our own space to relax and unwind. He's really good at giving me time when I need it, and I'm really good at giving him time when he needs it. There's been a couple situations where I have had to really be the strength and really step back. And even though I wanted to cry and I wanted to be emotional and worry about him and kind of tell him how I'm feeling about something, I've had to stop myself and let him deal with his own mental health and his own issues and his own stress. And I've had to step back and learn to deal with mine. So we really balance each other out. And I think one of the things with us is our marriage, we communicate nonstop. We don't have secrets. We don't have these wishy-washy conversations. We sit down, we tell each other how we feel, and we're honest with each other. But we also know when each other needs space. So I think that being able to do that really supports each other. He will tell me how he's feeling, I will tell him how I'm feeling, and we just kind of learn to balance each other out. If I'm struggling or he is struggling, we balance each other out and pick each other up and pick up the slack for one another. When, he's giving 80, I might give 20 because I'm emotionally exhausted. Or when he's having a rough day or a long day at work and he's only able to give 10, I may give 90%. It's just about balance and being able to communicate with each other. What's one thing that you wish people understood about the life of a law enforcement family that often gets overlooked? I think the most important thing is that law enforcement didn't sign up to get hurt. They didn't sign up to get degraded. And us as families, we sacrifice, holidays and birthdays and all of these things. And there's stress, there's constant worry with being the spouse of a law enforcement officer. So I think the one thing that I wish people would understand is that they are human and they are just wanting to protect the community. The majority of cops are good people. The majority of them are good. It's the small, bad seeds in all of the different pieces that make everybody kind of fall, down to that level that where we kind of categorize them into this dirtiness or these corrupt government law enforcement officials or whatever people say. I think people say it's like the biggest gang in the world. Okay, that's not true. The majority of them are good. It just happens to be the little spots of the bad ones that make it bad for everybody, because we kind of fall into this whole, well, if one of them must be doing it, then most of them must be like that. And that's just simply not true. What do you think makes a marriage strong and lasting and makes it stay for a long time? For me, and my husband, I can't speak for everybody else, but communication, honesty, and a genuine friendship. I mean, you have to be friends with your spouse. If you're not, if you don't have those open lines of communication, if you're not honest, if you feel like you have to hide things from your spouse, then that's not the right relationship for you. So I think, again, communication, honesty, and being friends. How did your view of marriage change after you got married? Okay, well, which time? Because the first one ended really badly, and I told myself I would never get married again. But I met my husband, who I'm married to now, and despite all the rough patches that we've had, I mean, I wouldn't change it for the world. He is my best friend, first and foremost, before anything. He's the person that I talk to, he's the person I go to, he's the person I want to see at the end of the day. So, I mean, that's kind of it in a nutshell. My view of marriage has changed because I realized that I needed to be married to my best friend instead of just being married to somebody that, I thought I would spend the rest of my life with. Thinking about my first marriage, I thought that divorce meant that you're a bad person. I was raised in the Catholic Church, and divorce is very looked down upon. So, you know, healing and being in a better spot, I feel like I'm able to give my whole heart to my husband now. And that hasn't always been that way in our whole marriage because I've had to do a lot of work on myself. But, my view has changed because we've been able to grow together. What has been the hardest season in your marriage so far, and how did you get through it? Well, honestly, my postpartum with was really difficult for me because I had a lot of postpartum rage and anger. And so I've had to we kind of hit a rock bottom space and a spot where we sat for a while, and I had to really learn to get through that. I went to therapy. I had surgery to remove my IUD that was infecting my body, and I had to balance my hormones out. And really having to go to therapy, look at myself, look at the hard things, acknowledge those hard things, and be able to get through it together. So then on the flip side, having to go through a termination and seeing my children hurt brought out a lot of anger in me that I thought kind of had went away. So that was really hard. And I think that that was the hardest season. We had to learn how to forgive, how to communicate. We had to kind of learn all of that together and work through it to get to where we are now. How do you keep growing together instead of growing apart? Well, we set time aside for each other. The first thing that we do is we make sure that we have date nights at least twice a month, if not more. Because if you don't have time together, just one on one without the kids, if you don't prioritize your marriage over everything else, then the home's not going to be stable. And I've always thought that, it's important to put your spouse before the kids because the kids are going to look to you guys for happiness. And if you're not happy, they're going to feel it. And then the whole foundation of the family is going to crumble. So really being able to, put each other first and prioritize each other and your love and your relationship over everything is how we've been able to stay together. And I would say that's speaking outwardly to everybody else. I feel like that's how you would maintain growing together instead of apart. What is the best piece of advice you have for getting through the hard times in life? The best piece of advice I can give you is learn to sit with discomfort without rushing to escape it. Pain, uncertainty, failure, and even boredom, these are not signs that you're off track with your life. They're part of the process of becoming someone wiser, someone who's more resilient, and more honest. And the people who grow, who heal, who find meaning in that are not the ones who avoid the suffering and the pain. They're the ones who let it teach them and go through the pain, not around it, without letting it define who they are. So it's really important to not trade that authenticity and that genuineness for the approval of other people or how your image looks. Instead of doing that, just go through the pain and learn to sit with it and grow through it. And I'm also going to add that doing the right thing, even when no one is watching, especially when no one is watching, is super important to have. in life. Integrity is not about how you appear. It's not about that image, right? It's about when the pressure builds and the shortcuts tempt you and the easy route comes in, or you want to do things that may not feel morally sound or ethically or legally sound. Your choices in those quiet moments shape your character far more than any public victory would. And in the end, the truth will come out and your peace will come from not perfection, but from knowing that you stayed true to yourself and your values. And that's what integrity is. And that is the most important thing that you can have in life. So I'm going to end this podcast episode here, but I think we had a really good Q&A session today. So I still have more questions. I have been saving these since March, so I have a lot more. And I'm going to have guests on coming up, so I will be recording more. And I'm sorry that I have taken 2 weeks off, but I hope you guys have had a great couple weeks. You can find this podcast on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, YouTube, RSS, you name it. You can look it up. Just look for the logo and Staying in My Lane podcast. So with that being said, until next time, I will see you later.